In today's episode of Histories and Evolutions of Information, I will be completing the WSU DTC 356 podcast project for the fall of 2021 with a controversial piece titled Strengthening Media Literacy Within Education to Win the Fight Against Misinformation. The term media literacy brings curiosity as to who should have it, how old is it, how do we access it, and most importantly, what is it? The advancement of technology, smartphones, and the internet have made media literacy more of an essential life skill needed to navigate digital spaces, now more than ever, because concerns about the effect of media have been around for a very long time and now need to be addressed. Arguments that are for and against media literacy have actually shaped how new industries and technology culture have continued to develop throughout history. I'm Ambresia Cubean-Burks, a fifth-year senior here at Washington State University, looking to complete my degree in both communications technology and digital technology and culture. We will explore why media literacy should be taught as a curriculum, including possible benefits and innovation this type of change has the potential to bring. We will begin by briefly discussing the history of media literacy and where it originated before and after the digital age commenced. The second major point I will be exploring is media literacy in education and how it can be used as a tool for mitigating truth decay. For my last point, I will discuss the relevancy of media's influence on children in grade school.
No, I can't believe it. I have to share this.
Wow, so many likes. What have you shared?
Look at this. It's so cool. I'll share it as well.
Groundbreaking, eating 1 kilo of chocolate a day boosts your memory? Where did you see that?
A friend from school has shared it with me. Not sure where she has seen it.
Did you double-check this information before sharing it?
What do you mean?
Trust in the media has begun to diminish right before our eyes over the past decade. Yet media still plays an ongoing and critical role in our everyday lives. Understanding the history of media literacy begins with ancient Greece and continues on through the development of the printing press, newspapers, and journalism. The term media literacy was coined in the 1960s as a way of understanding technology as we know it. Before media became a way of communicating through media professionals, scholars, and everyday people, communication was led by psychologists, critical theorists, and philosophers. So these are the people that you would go to get your main information. This is an ancient problem that classical Greek philosophers discovered and took into consideration. The root of media literacy concerns is quite simple. It stems from literacy. This is the concept of learning how to read and write in proper context. During the time of the great philosopher Plato, information shared was word to mouth, and for the most part, education was informal. If you were rich enough, you might have been able to study scholarly homemade manuscripts, but because this means of communication was very expensive and time-consuming, very few people became educated and literate media consumers. This all changed when Johannes Gutenberg invented the movable typing printing press in 1452. The history of media literacy began to closely follow the history of media technology. With each new invention, new discussion, new fears, new rules, all began to follow. As the world began to innovate, media literacy became more important, with the first mass media production, the newspaper. The question began to arise, how will people interpret this news? Will they consume it the correct way? Or will they formulate their own information? By the early 1800s, the era of the penny press approached, spreading like a wildfire, being readily available to any and everyone because of the low cost being just a penny. Suddenly, even a homeless person who's not even interested in what's going on in the world now had access to media with just a penny. With an expansion of consumption came a lack of education, a higher spread of misinformation. Media literacy once required an understanding of language and content. Now it seems as though a quick scan through a trendy headline is enough. It is becoming more and more important that with every new communication medium, a new set of skills is needed to navigate the world of digital media. In order to fully participate in a social system as human beings, we need to know society dynamics, communication systems, code conventions, and rituals. These are all custom of the laws that are written and unwritten. New generations learn behaviors in a way that values and consumes and customs are surrounded by the concept of socialization. Sociologists believe that the process of socialization that children begin integrates into family dynamics and large social groups, and eventually it hits the mainstream of society. This process of socialization is what allows teenagers and children to be adequate adults. Social learning and the process of socialization is naturally developed from what students are most familiar with. It comes from their family, their teachers, school, religion, and friendship dynamics, and now even technology. Nowadays, mass media and television have a popular control over social interactions and interpretations. The patterns of conveniently giving children gradual access to information is no longer possible because digital media and electronics have made information immediately and readily available on a daily basis. Modern media has placed children in the same symbolic world as adults. This makes cultural information, important information, sensible information, all accessible to any and everyone, regardless of age, regardless of maturity, and most importantly, what we're here to focus on, education. The modern social information system has changed because socialization continues to advance. Through ready accessibility and social intentional exposure, media created a multitude of social standards for living. This sort of social digital reality provides us knowledge that helps us to develop social learning. According to research, the centrality of media today is manifested in many ways. People in the US spend the same amount of time being exposed to media as they do sleeping. Research consistently shows that students finish high school with 22K hours of television consumption, in comparison to only having half of that number spent in school. By the time a child is in kindergarten, they have averaged more time spent consuming media than a college student has spent in a 4-year degree program. Do you want to know how long that is? Studies show that is 5 to 6K hours spent consuming media. This is more of a reason as to why integrating media literacy into core principles and key questioning with education technology is important. It holds much relevancy. An ongoing growing number of states are now requiring media literacy to be taught in the classroom. We have analyzed how media literacy is needed to interrotate media messages. According to news reports from advocacy organization Media Literacy Now, 14 states have addressed media literacy as an education law. It is now required as an instructional subject, along with creating media literacy committees that allow media courses to count towards academic requirements. Out of the 14 states, only 6 have passed this legislation within the last 3 years. And that number needs to continuously increase in order for us to have a more media literate world. The president of Advocacy Association Media Literacy Now, Erin McNeil, said that because of the growing high-profile national news events that are published immediately and dragged through social media forums, the sense of urgency around making the world more media literate has increased by a lot. Misinformation can almost feel like a disease that takes over the web when people are not educated properly on how to direct and interpret sort of highly impactful information resources. Research shows that students succeed more when they are asked to determine whether an online source is trustworthy or not. This allows them to decipher what is fake versus what is real. In a 2020 study conducted by Stanford, high school students completed 6 exercises focused around media literacy. These exercises included distinguishing ads and news, analyzing tweets, and evaluating political messages posted on social media. Results show that across the board, students are profoundly poor in all tasks given. 2 out of 3 of the students were rated the lowest skill level of media literacy distinction. Advanced leaders in the field of news reporting say that mandating media literacy education is very important, and currently, emphasizing media literacy across all curriculums within all grade levels should be a standard. Now that we've discussed the history of media literacy, an analysis of how media literacy affects generations, and the relevance it has within the US today, I want you to stop and think about how many hours you've spent consuming media throughout your day. A Harvard study shows that the average US adult spends more than 10 hours a day consuming different forms of media, which you would think would be normal. This includes listening to the radio, social media interactions, and even web surfing. Think about how 10 hours of media consumption is 40% of your day alone. With slighter consumption, teenagers are now spending an average of 9 hours a day consuming media. Historically, this has been identified as the most waking hours we as humans have spent consuming mass media ever. As media consumption and the digital technology takes up more and more of our time every day and every year, it is essential that we understand all of the influence that media and technology has over everything that we do. It is proven that media literacy is a tool that we use every day. Intentionally and unintentionally, media literacy is a tool that distinguishes everyday information that we come across. Without proper education, fake news is easier to consume, it's easier to spread, and it is easier to weaponize. Media literacy is at its peak of essential use because of digital technology advancing every single day. There's always a new app coming out, there's always a new news source coming out, there's always a new phone, the newest gadget. It's all forms of media consumption. Now that information systems are creating softwares that identify fake news sources, these advancements rely on artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence holds algorithmic biases that we have no control over. Algorithmic bias is essentially the bias that the coder or the technology system holds that is inevitable. So essentially, we are expected to rely on these forms of technology to decipher what's real and fake, rather than being educated enough to decipher what's real and fake for ourselves, being educated enough to consume media properly for ourselves and our own benefits. A world led by technology isn't necessarily a bad one or a bad thing, but we also need to be educated on how to use this technology, on how to navigate it. We can't solely depend on these informational systems. Take Facebook, for example. They have a system that will tell you if your post is real or fake. Now, do you think a post with a very clear Nazi headline or something very dramatic that is historical is going to get the same flag as something that is a little bit less distinctive? It's not. And those are things that we have to think about. These are reasons that media literacy and education are important. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Histories and Evolutions of Information. Overall, without proper knowledge used to decipher what is real and what is fake, misinformation will continue to spread like a digital disease. Without education, we are doing a disservice to generations to come. On next week's episode, we will talk about social media negatively impacting the political agenda. Until next time, this is Ambresia, and thank you for listening.